Right, good evening. Welcome to the September 30th, 2020 Abington Finance Committee meeting. We are meeting once again tonight to prepare for the special town meeting that will be held on October 19th. We have given our recommendations on what were all of the warrant articles. But we have a new warrant article, and we have a couple of changes, a tweak or two to what was previously on the warrant. So we're going to reopen some things and discuss some warrant articles, and then we'll go through our normal liaison reports, correspondence, and review of minutes. We do not have correspondence or review of minutes, but they're always on our agenda. So to quickly get things underway, we have with us tonight our acting town manager, Scott Lambiase. Scott, thanks for joining us.
Hey, Matt, can I make a correction there? He's no longer the acting town manager.
Oh, he's not. All right. Excellent.
Yeah, I was thinking it's supposed to be in September, right?
Yeah,
Yep.
I'm not acting.
Not acting.
Congratulations. I have very quickly edited the version of the agenda that I'm saving to
There you go.
make it official. Let me save that sucker. Town manager Scott Lambiase. Congratulations, Scott.
Thank you.
Very happy to see the acting removed from there. It's nice. So we've got our town manager, Scott Lambiase, our assistant town manager and finance director, Sue Moquin, and we have the head of our DPW, John Stone, with us tonight. Thank you all for joining us. So let's get right into the warrant articles. First one that we're going to look into our recommendation of is Article 1, starting right off of the bat, the Central Street Bridge. In the previous version of the warrant that we voted and recommended approval of Article 1 on, the amount for borrowing to replace the Central Street Bridge was $430,000. We have gotten an updated and significantly higher amount on that, which is why our DPW Chief John Stone is with us tonight. So looking at it, do I have a motion to reopen Article 1?
Motion to reopen Article 1.
Second.
Any discussion on reopening Article 1? Without any, all those in favor of reopening Article 1? All those opposed? It is unanimous. And do I have a motion so that we can begin discussion on Article 1?
Like, is it a motion to open discussion? Because I'm sure there's a lot of questions.
I think if we have a motion either way, either to recommend or pass over, we can then discuss and then vote on that motion.
Motion to recommend.
Dr. Tyler can correct me if I'm wrong on the procedures there. But
Sure. So honestly, Matt, the point here is if you look at your agenda, review of recommendations for special town meeting warrant articles,
yep.
you don't actually have to take another motion now, since the last motion was an affirmative motion.
Okay.
You just actually open. So if you want to reopen or reconsider, so now you can have your general discussion. Somebody based on this discussion and feedback from the DPW director could offer a favorable motion, and then we could have continued discussion as to the merits.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Dr. Tyler. Always appreciate your in-depth knowledge of open meeting rules. So discussion on Article 1. John, do you want to go over the updates on that and kind of where things were and then what happened?
Yes, Matt, thank you. Basically, we had our engineers do another inspection on the Central Street Bridge. based on the latest inspection by the state. The latest inspection shows displacement between a couple of more beams that weren't in the previous construction bid. The original construction bid was for replacements of it. The bridge has 10 beams, and we were going to replace 4 of them that were bad. But now there are 2 other beams that are displaced, separating. So it's the opinion of our engineer that all 10 beams should be replaced now, along with the deck. The bridge was originally, on a scale of 1 to 10, was graded a 4. Now it's at a 3 based on the latest state report. So it's in the opinion of our engineer that we should replace all 10 beams, deck, sidewalks, and railings. That's why we have this new number of $890,000. We could still go with the original bid, but it's like putting a Band-Aid. It's like a $300,000 or $400,000 Band-Aid is what it is. That's his opinion.
So what I appreciate the update. So what changed? Was just time passed and it
Yes.
further deteriorated, or
Well,
the initial review was not as thorough as it should have been?
No, the initial review was very thorough. It's deteriorating as time goes on.
How long was it between the 2 reviews?
The engineer review, the original one was 2016. The latest one was this year, and the state inspects them at least every 2 years. So they might inspect it every year and a half, every 2 years. The latest one we have from the state is from March.
So,
yeah, go
sorry.
ahead, Joe.
So are the beams the only significant piece of concern? Like, so we replace all 10 beams. Are there, not being a bridge guy, are there more components that we'll have to come back and replace next year?
There are 3 main components of the bridge, and on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being best, the beams were graded at 3 by the state. The deck was graded at 3 by the state, and the supports were graded a 7. So we don't have to touch the supports, the abutments they're called. But we need to address the beams and the deck. The original proposal was for replacing 4 beams in the deck. But now it may be in the town's best interest to replace all 10 beams, deck, railings, and sidewalks.
And so how fast does the support go from a 7 to a 3? Is it 10 years, 20 years?
Yeah, it's over a span of years. For instance, it took us probably 3 or 4 years to go from, for the beams and the deck, to go from a grade 4 to a grade 3. The problem we have is the next step, grade 2, the state could shut the bridge down. And that's a problem with the police station being right there. Yep. And any emergency services. Obviously, it's a problem.
Yeah, so one of the things, and I've started sharing the inspection report that was shared and the estimate. So if people are looking at the screen, they should be able to see that. One of the things that I was noticing on there was, I believe that the state had marked it as the urgency of repair as ASAP, as opposed to either immediate or prioritize. If you look in the bottom left corner of what's being shared right now. I think we want to try to avoid getting into a immediate, because that's where John, I would assume that's where they shut things down and tell you can't use it.
That's correct, Matt.
So in the emails that went around, one of the things I saw mentioned grant money to be able to do this fix. Is that?
Yes, I applied for a grant under the state's small bridge program. We were denied because that's for bridges with spans of less than 20 feet. This particular bridge has a span of 22 feet.
Okay.
So we just missed out. But I'll be trying to tap into the small bridge program for other bridges around town in the future.
The,
Under 20 feet, 20-foot bridges do we have?
That's correct. We
You
have
don't, you don't actually have to answer that. I was just,
we have a few. We have the Washington Street Bridge, the Center Ave Bridge. We probably have about three or four.
the document we saw said that there's something you could do that only works for 10 years. And then I saw 3 alternatives. One was 250 or something. Yeah, this
There it is.
252, 300. Is one of those the one that only works for 10 years?
That's correct. Alternative 1 and 2 are replacing beams 1, 2, 8, and no, 1, 2, 9, and 10. That's alternative 1 and 2. Alternative 3 would be replacing all 10 beams.
so John, I think where Chris is going with this is essentially alternatives 1 or 2 would only be to replace the beams that have been identified as bad.
That's correct.
The 10-year assessment, I'm assuming, is that the beams that we would not be replacing, the six other beams, would probably in the estimation of 10 years, that would be the amount of life left before those beams had to be replaced. Is that correct?
That's the engineer's thinking, Matt, but you have to remember you can't really get a really good visual on the internal beams, the ones numbered, say, from 3 to 8, because you can only see one side of them because they're covered by the other beams.
Yep.
So if we choose option 1 or 2 and start dismantling the bridge and take beams 1, 2, 9, and 10 down and find that the other beams have similar problems as the previous 4, then we're replacing the whole thing anyway at that time, and we're scrambling for funds.
So I have the diagram up now. 1, 2, 9, and 10 are essentially the end beams, correct?
That's correct. 1 and 10 are under the sidewalk. 2 and 9 are the beginning of the support for the deck.
Okay. And then 3 through 8 are completely underneath.
Yes, you can see one side of them. That's it.
Okay.
And as I said, the latest report is showing a displacement between beam 7 and beam 8, which wasn't noted in any prior report from the state. So with that information, it might be in the town's best interest to replace all 10 beams, deck, instead of trying to Band-Aid it for 400,000, whatever it is, 380, whatever they come up with.
So sorry for an extremely ignorant question because I didn't do my research. Is this the bridge that the commuter rail goes over?
No,
No,
Joe, this is the bridge if you're on, I believe it's Washington Street, and you're turning onto Central Street towards the police station, where like Glen Arlo Point is, and the butterfly.
Oh, I
garden.
see. I
The-
got you.
the bridge-
Right over that.
the
Right
bridge
over that
right
small.
there.
Yep, I got you.
Right there, that has the orange cones on both sides of it already.
The orange cones are there because the state doesn't want anyone parking alongside the bridge because of safety issues.
Gotcha.
All day long, you wouldn't even notice that it's a bridge.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was just gonna say as I zoom in now, I can see that it's over like a river into the lake, right?
Yep.
Yeah, it's the.
That's correct.
Yep, I see it now. Okay, thank you. Sorry for that.
No, not a problem at all.
What I was looking at was that if you spent 250,000 every 10 years for 50 years, that present value, depending on the interest rate we use, it may be less than the 890. But if that's not practical, to go in every 10 years to do this work, and it may not be, but I'm just pointing that out.
It's a valid point, but the problem is we're not going to know the full conditions of beams 3 through 8 until we start dismantling the bridge.
So is it possible that beams 3 to 8, probably unlikely, are fine, and therefore when the time comes, it lowers our overall cost?
No, that would have to be part of the bid.
Gotcha.
Part of the bid. We'd have to
Yeah.
make that decision before.
So we have to decide before, unfortunately, without really knowing. I get you.
Correct.
I get
Correct.
you. Yeah.
John, what's the chance that this turns into like $1 million?
Our engineer, they do bridge inspections and designs across the state. They're very good at what they do, and I trust their numbers. But I mean, I can't guarantee that it's not going to go to $1 million or it's going to go to $750,000. I don't. This is his latest professional opinion, and we had to pay for that. We had to pay for this.
And then when this, say we say yes, this then goes out to bid for people to do, or something else.
We are,
Say that again, Greg. I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
So say we say yes, and then so this goes out to bid, or
Yes.
it then gets started. People start taking it apart, and then we look at what it's going to cost.
No, the finance committee and town meeting approves the project, goes through the bidding process. We select the bidder, the winning bidder, we award a bidder, and then the dismantling starts once the price is agreed upon.
You know, I was just going to ask this. Thank you for just saying that, just the timeline of it. Do people know what are, like, we said yes to 850 grand. Do they know going into this?
Yeah, it's a public record.
yeah, I'm
Plus,
sure
again-
I'm sure they could look if they wanted
Yeah.
to, because it's not like it's a secret.
So it's really
Yeah, but
not.
it's still very competitive. I mean, it depends on the market out there. Some things are going to come in lower and some things are going to come higher. Bridges are unique. There's, not necessarily a ton of guys out there that are not working that are doing bridge work. So it's probably going to come in a bit on the high end.
You're saying Bridgeworks guys aren't like a dime a dozen.
Road work guys aren't necessarily a dime a dozen, but bridge work's even, more specific.
I can't imagine there's a lot of people that do bridges.
Yeah, and this is a relatively small project. So we might be able to get a really good competitive price.
What we're talking that if we go the big route, that it lasts 50 years. Is there any kind of a warranty there, or?
I doubt you'll get any type of warranty from a bridge, but I think 50 years would be a good number. I mean, you'll get warranty on specific portions of the bridge, but at the bridge as a whole, I mean, I don't think you're going to get a 50-year warranty on a bridge.
No, you'll get a couple of years on the workmanship, and if something, drastically failed, whether it's the cement or the product itself or whatever he specs out, for a certain period. But I've had some issues with a bridge project, and it's not easy to chase after a warranty on anything, never mind a bridge. That being said, that's why when you go through the competitive bid process, though, there's qualifications for the people that can do this. It's not like you just give it to the lowest bidder and hope he's done a bridge before.
So we're spending 640,000 extra for 40 years that we're not necessarily sure of.
So based on what we had 430 before.
Well, yeah, I see this
So I
alternative.
know,
What's this alternative 250?
yeah, that's a good question.
One was, it's just the width of the bridge. The 250, the width was going to be a little bit smaller than alternative 2. There's really not much of a difference between the two. Their original recommendation was alternative 2 back in 2016, but now things have changed since we've gone to condition assessment 3, with the next step being shutting the bridge down.
So I think the question is, where did the 430 number come from?
Escalation. That was a number that we put in probably a year and a half ago. We thought that there'd be an increase in concrete costs, steel costs, gas costs. So the 430 number was a little bit high. And they were based off the 2016 report, which are a little bit higher than these two. So actually the cost has come down. So we could choose 1 or 2 if that's what you guys want to do.
I think that 1 or 2 doesn't seem like it's a cheaper solution, but it doesn't feel like the right solution, especially where that 890 could potentially even go more as we start to tear the bridge apart. It feels like we would be handcuffing ourselves if we just choose alternative 2. I think just the concern is that not concern is the wrong word. It's just that we went from more than double, and we're just trying to make sure that we understand as well as everyone watching.
Is this the worst bridge in Abington? Are there others that are needing similar work?
This is the worst one right now. Eventually, Washington Street Bridge, which is more of a culvert, is going to need some work. I'll be applying for a grant through the Small Bridge Program for that, and Center Ave Bridge also needs some work. But Central Street is definitely by far the only one that's graded 3. The other ones are definitely higher than that.
Did
When
they
you get
give you
down,
any indication of how long it could be before we're at grade 2? When they, like, does it have X number of months or years left?
all I can say is that it went from a grade 4 to a grade 3 in 2 years. So it could be 2 years.
Okay.
But you're not going to have like an engineer or anyone is going to be able to tell you exactly when this bridge is going to fail. No one knows. There's so many different variables involved. Weather, 100-year rain events. It could last 10 years. It could last 1 year.
And
Not even
when
an
is
engineer is going to tell you.
When's the next inspection? Like, how often are these inspected?
They were doing the inspections for the Central Street Bridge probably every year and a half. But then COVID came along, and we didn't get one for a while. But this latest one recently came in. So I think they're back on track. So it's about a year and a half, at least every 2 years.
So theoretically, we could take this up sometime next year as well and be in the same situation, basically.
Yeah, yes. I mean, it's up to you, this board and the town, if they want to wait for spring town meeting or next fall town meeting. I mean, that's your decision.
Okay.
I got to say that, the problem will be, though, if it does get downgraded to a 2, you're probably not going to be allowed to, I don't know if you'll be allowed to travel over it at all, but I can almost guarantee you won't be allowed to bring like trucks over it, fire engines over it. Ambulance might even be too heavy. And
Yes,
that'll
you're
happen
right, Scott.
immediately. That will
I think
happen immediately with the report that downgrades it to a 2. And then we will be scrambling at that point to do what we can to get things fixed. And you'll probably have to do an 890,000, or at that point, if we're waiting, it could be over $1 million, but that's the least that you will have to do. Plus it'll take that much longer because we're going to be reacting as opposed to trying to take care of it now.
absolutely.
This
Chris,
is
go ahead.
this would
Chris,
be
go ahead.
borrowing
Yes.
to pay for, Scott?
Yes, we'd definitely be borrowing for
Any
this.
idea what the rate would be?
Sue, maybe you can answer that. I think we're in pretty good shape, but I don't want to.
I know we just got 2% for our force main.
So you're on mute.
All right, that's good enough.
So
All
Sue,
right,
you're still on mute.
now, redoing my present value calculation, it doesn't,
Still on mute, Sue.
doing it all at once now is cheaper than the present value of doing it. Even if this alternative 2 worked, that you did it every 10 years, which is obviously doubtful, that's still more expensive than doing it all at once at 2%, if you can borrow at 2%.
So I don't work with the financial advisors, but yeah, lately everything that we've been doing is in the 2 to 3% range.
And Scott or Sue, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the expectation, given where the economy is right now, is now might be a better time to get a better both rate and price, as people are probably looking for work right now.
Yeah, I mean, there doesn't seem to be any shortage of road work going on in our area, but I would like to think that it's a competitive market. It's like John said too, it's not a huge bridge. So, you know, it's a lot of companies might say, hey, this would be a good back burner thing, good quick hit. So yeah, I think we probably will get a fairly good price on it, or get some good bids.
Anyone else with other comments or questions?
John, which one do you think we should do?
Option 3, Greg, would be my choice, but like I said, I understand fiscal constraints and the way everything's going right now.
And I agree with John that why would you want to do a 50-year bridge rather than a 10 or 15-year bridge? Get it done right so you don't have to refix it or
And
in the future.
to note, it wouldn't even, like, the alternative 1 or 2 wouldn't even really be doing a new bridge. It would be doing a repair of the bridge.
It would be replacing 4 beams and leaving
Right.
6 original beams that are 66 years old, 64 years old.
John, for the alternative 3, is anything left from the old bridge, or is it a completely new one?
The abutments are left, Greg. We're not touching. They have a grade of 7 from the state, which is good. We're not touching the abutments, which hold up the beams.
So what? But the only reason that I'm asking that question is because if we're going to spend that much money and then have to dig it up in 10 or 15 years again, that's the only reason that I was just asking that question.
No, it's a valid question, Greg. I appreciate the question, but our engineer thinks the abutments are in fine shape. There's no use in replacing them now. They're not going anywhere. They're not showing signs of stress or cracks or anything like that. So the abutments are fine, which saves us a ton of money. Because I think if we had to replace the abutments as well as the deck and the beams, we're looking at $3-4 million. Would be my ballpark estimate.
The abutments are a huge cost.
That's correct, sir.
Okay.
Thank you.
Anyone have anything else? So we have already made a motion to recommend approval of Article 1. Do we want to take up a change to that motion at this time? Don't
actually hear crickets.
I was going to say I could hear them too. It might be at my house, but it might not be.
I tend to have crickets.
Yeah, we do too, but I'm not near the section of the house where we usually hear them.
It's the same thing that we already said yes to?
Yes.
Yeah, thanks. That was number 3?
So what we said yes to was the article itself.
Got it.
So what we would do if we leave it alone is change the motion that I make to state the amount of 890. Is that correct, Sue and Sean? Sean's nodding yes. So we leave it alone.
You just need to change the amount.
We will recommend an amount of $890,000. So if everyone is good with that, Sean is saying we should exit this discussion. I agree. Are there other warrant articles? And let me bring the warrant back up. Find the sharing the warrant. And of course, I'm at the bottom of it.
John, thank you for your time.
Yes, John, thank you so much. Does anyone have anything else for John before we let him go? I don't think any of our other warrant articles dealt with the DPW. So
Thanks, John.
Good.
Thank you, guys. Thank
John,
you, Sue.
we
Thank you, Scott.
No problem.
appreciate your
Nice.
time as always.
Thank you. Any questions, feel free to reach out.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. I actually, Articles 2, 3, and 4 in our last meeting when we voted on these, we voted to defer to the Board of Selectmen. I've been advised by the town moderator that the appropriate board to defer to would be the planning board in this instance. Sue, do we need to change that or revote? Sue, Scott? Or
You probably
just,
should, if you voted, if you guys voted as a group that you wanted to do it that way, you probably should revote it.
Okay.
With the new language.
So,
I mean, if you voted to defer to the
we voted to
selectmen.
defer to the selectmen.
Yeah,
so
you should. I would say change it.
we should
Revote.
change that.
Yeah.
So, does anyone want to make a motion to reconsider Articles 2, 3, and 4?
Moved.
Yes.
I heard Justin first. Is there a second?
Wasn't me.
Oh, sorry.
That's okay, but I'll second it.
And I'll go with Chris and then Justin. Okay. Discussion on reopening. All those in favor? All those opposed? Abstaining? It is reopened. Is there a motion that someone would like to make in regards to Articles 2, 3, and 4?
Motion to defer to the planning board.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second. Chris.
Any discussion? Without any discussion, all those in favor of the motion to defer to the planning board? All those opposed? Abstaining? It is unanimous. All right. Look for where else we had changes, wording changes for zoning bylaws and the zoning articles. I don't think we need to address that in changing our motions. Same with Article 14. Article 15, wording changes on the stormwater bylaw, also not impacting us or what our vote and our deferral on those was. 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21. Okay, so the next stop is Article 21. Article 21 was previously Articles 21 through 25. We voted to defer on all of these, but they have been combined into one article. I'm guessing that we should reopen and revote our deferral based on it being one article now.
Motion to reopen Articles 21, I guess.
Yep.
Second.
Any discussion on reopening? Without any, all those in favor of reopening Article 21? All those opposed, abstaining, it is reopened. And then what we had done previously is defer to the Board of Assessors.
Motion to defer to the Board of Assessors.
Is there a second?
Was a second by Joe, but I was on mute.
Yep. All right. I think it is your cricket, Joe, because you unmuted and the cricket noise came back.
These headphones are designed to block out noise. Oh yeah, no, that's definitely my cricket. I'll go on mute.
No worries. Okay, is there any discussion on deferring to the Board of Assessors? That any, all those in favor of the motion to defer Article 21 to the Board of Assessors? All those opposed, abstaining, it is unanimous. All right, moving along, nice rapid pace we've got going here now. The next and final area of discussion is the brand new Article 27, which we have not seen in any way. So Article 27 is to see if the town will vote a change to Section 175-24.3D of the town's zoning bylaws so that it may read as follows. Number of licenses, the number of recreational marijuana retailers and or recreational marijuana delivery, only retailers permissible to be located in the MOD, shall be limited to 50% of the number of licenses issued within the town for the retail sale of alcoholic beverages and not to be drunk on premises where sold pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 138, Section 15. In the event that 50% of said issued licenses shall not be a whole number, the limit shall be rounded up to the nearest whole number. So this is an article, I believe, and Scott and Sue, correct me if I'm wrong, to increase the number of potential licenses for marijuana retailers and base it on the number of essentially liquor stores in the town.
Correct.
The previous zoning bylaw had a set specific number, did it not? For number that were allowed?
Yeah, apparently it set the number at 2, and because there was some confusion, I guess, last year at town meeting when this was put into place. And it turns out that they thought 2 could be a max number, but 2 was a minimum number. So the petitioner would, obviously wants it corrected. This is, I guess, kind of common way to decide how many licenses you would grant. You would make it, some sort of ratio compared to your sale of alcohol licenses.
Yep.
So we don't have any in town now, right?
So none have opened, but I believe, and Scott, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that 2 licenses have been granted.
Correct.
And I believe that there is someone who wants to apply for a 3rd.
Correct. So there's one that's granted and I believe fully approved. There's one that has been granted by the state and working through planning. This particular petition was brought in by someone who wants to do the 3rd one. And he has an exclusive license or deal with the state to actually deliver the product to. But he needs a retail store and he needs a manufacturing spot. So that's why he's been trying to get this 3rd one in before I started. He was one of the first guys I met. And like I said, we thought we had no ability to give him another license. The way it read and the way everybody read the bylaw, it said, it was 2. And so this is why he needs to have it changed. And apparently that this would be more in line with what the state law was contemplating.
How many would this allow right now,
I'd have to take a look. I'm not sure. And I just wrote myself a note to see how many liquor licenses you have for package stores. My guess with the population, it's based on population. You probably have at least 8. So this would allow up to 4, I'm guessing. And that's pretty close because Whitman, Duxbury, similar size populations, and that's about what we had for licenses available.
Is there a reason, since none have opened, is there a reason that we would even look at this?
Well, we have to look at it because it is a citizen's petition and it's in front of us. The other two really, they just sort of a victim of the pandemic. I mean, things have slowed everything down at the state level, at the town level. Like I said, one of them I think is pretty much through the process. The other one doesn't have a lot to do. Matter of fact, I've gotten correspondence from the Cannabis Control Commission that saying they're pretty much all set with the state. So it's just sort of finishing up what their planning issues are. And again, this one, it's a citizen petition. We really have no choice but to, look at it and act upon it. It will bring a significant, a fairly significant amount of revenue to the town. And if it's a town that's already accepted it and adopted and is in favor of having these stores.
That was my other question. Do we know? Because I thought we had said let's again, I don't remember how it was voted on, but I thought we said let's wait the year and then see how other towns are doing it. Maybe there's some negative things, some positive things. Some towns have done really good.
So Greg,
I think the moderator can answer that.
Greg, to give you a recap and to give Scott a bit of a recap.
Oh, I heard it.
of what happened at town meeting a couple years ago. Not a couple years, but about a year and a half ago at this point. There were almost conflicting decisions made by town meeting. We first voted to delay approval for a year or until it was zoned for, and then we zoned for it, like 3 articles later. So it was very much a confusing and inconsistent outcome at town meeting, but the outcome of it all was that we zoned for it, and now as a town we allow licenses for marijuana retailers, and I believe also for production and manufacturing. And so
how much money the other towns are bringing in off this, Scott? Like, have they talked about, Rockland's bringing in $5 million or 50 grand or?
No, I haven't. And I mean, a lot of towns have, these just open, but I will reach out to Rockland to find out. I think the petitioner had, forwarded a letter in sort of explaining it, and, it's 3%, I guess, of the sales or as a local tax, and another 3%. But what that's really, I mean, it really is based on his sales, and as more of these places open, their projections are probably great. He's probably, $50,000-$60,000 a year in year one when it's a big hit, but over time, I don't know.
Yeah. So what has been seen so far that I'm aware of was the first couple that opened in like Leicester and other places in the state saw very quick, very immediate, very large sums of money. But then as others started to open and those became not the only ones around, the money started spreading out, as you would expect.
And so the location and everything of these places, that's all up to the planning board, right? So they decide when to approve or where it's going.
I know the planning board, is it planning and zoning or just planning? It definitely goes through the same type of approval process that anyone applying to open a business in the town would have to go through.
And it has to be within that MOD, which is your
Correct.
marijuana overlay district, and I don't think that's a very big
district.
It's
it's a small one. I think it's just up at the northern end of Route 18.
But this petition, all it does is it raises the number from the two
Correct.
we have now to maybe
So
4, maybe 5. That's,
yeah, so
it's
a
not huge.
typical. Oh, sorry, Chris, keep going.
Yeah. No,
Yeah,
that's
so
fine. That's
so a
all
typical.
I'm established.
Yeah, a typical bylaw change like this, most of the time the finance committee would defer on. This one has a bit more direct financial impact on the town, where this would have a direct at least a potential direct increase in the amount of revenues that can be brought into the town.
The only reason that I'm saying this is that it would be good to talk to other places to see what each individual store will do if we're looking to increase the number. If, for instance, this is, again, I don't know, I'm assuming this brings in tons of money. I have no idea. But if it doesn't, I don't know.
I think this particular shop, if this was to happen and that particular shop was to go in, they would bring in more money than the other ones because they have I don't know if it was a year or so, they have an exclusive area that they can actually deliver. And so they would have a retail storefront. They would be growing their own.
Yeah.
They would be supplying wholesale, and they'd be supplying delivery retail throughout this area. So
does this also bring in revenue for police doing details outside of the shops?
if there was a traffic issue that we needed to put police details there, we would charge it to
Okay.
the business. And that may be a case when they first open, but I think that's for the most part.
So it's not like a permanent requirement that they have to have an
policeman.
officer. Okay.
You know, they would provide their own security.
How many does Duxbury have?
Duxbury didn't allow any. They do have they did create a district. They did the moratorium. But again, in that town, there's a place or maybe a couple places in Plymouth. So it wasn't like anybody had to go that far. And I don't know how many people were looking for it, but.
And that's always
that's the thing about Abington too, right? I mean, there's all of the neighboring towns have them.
yes.
So it's not, yeah. Okay.
That's why I asked the financial stuff, because it's strictly a financial question, I think, of is this going to bring us in enough money to where I think, again, I don't know about anybody else, but are these things really good to have in your town, in your neighborhood? Whether or not they bring in money, I'm not even talking about that, but there's going to be issues or whatever that come about, just like there are with liquor stores, just like there are with anything. My point is, inviting more of it, is it really worth the trouble? Towns like Duxbury, other towns I've heard have not done it. There's one in Rockland that my neighbor goes to, so it's not crazy. He goes to it. So for me, I'm like, what's really, if the numbers really don't make a good amount of sense.
Well, I mean, it sounds like the others may not be ready to open, whereas this person may actually be ready to open. The person who sort of has this extra one in mind, right? So it seems like we're advancing, getting at least one in the town by doing this. And, you know, the others may choose not to open, right? If they've already got major competition.
And one with a special dispensation from the state to deliver. So.
Right.
So is this coming up because this would be over 2?
Correct.
Yep.
And so the first 2 people that got approved, whatever, they're just not moving fast enough. This person says they can move, but this company, whatever it is, says they can move faster.
Yep, he believes he can get in there and build it out within months. He can at least start, you know, his delivery operation and his retail storefront pretty quickly. And, you know, I think the market will take care of itself. That's always been my belief. You know, you might have 3 of them, but if there isn't a market for 3 of them, 3 of them aren't going to survive.
Like almost any other business.
Yeah.
Are there any provisions in here to keep it to where you can't have 50 of them in the town?
Yes, the way that this is worded, it's half of the number of liquor licenses, half of the number essentially of package stores. And that number, I believe, Scott, correct me if I'm wrong, is a state statute that's based on population of the municipality.
Correct. Currently, it is a state statute based on the population. There's a bit of wiggle room there at times to get an extra license by special legislation, and there's always, at least every couple of years, there's always some legislation to try and make it up to the municipality to decide how many they want to give out. But it's a solid number, and it's somewhere, like I said, it can't be more than 8 right now. I'm at a population of 16,000, it's probably somewhere around that.
But I mean, aside from that, like the town is not big enough to support more than, I can't even imagine 2 stores here, let alone 10 or however many, So I don't think basically this just helps somebody open a business that's ready to open a business, right? I mean, that's kind of what we're talking about.
Essentially.
Yeah.
It's a business that is less conventional than what we are used to based on the changing laws of the state and the town, which is why it's even coming up as more of an issue right now.
But I think proponents of these types of establishments will also make the argument that, again, the free market will dictate, and it'll drive prices down.
Yep.
Maybe, it surprises me sometimes when you see how many actual liquor stores they are and where they are. I always thought that in Duxbury, there was an awful lot of them, and they were all right near each other, but they all survive.
Okay.
Right. So we have been discussing without a motion on this, which I wanted to do because I wanted to at least get a feel before we made a motion one way or another, whether that's the appropriate open meeting way to go. But do we have a motion for Article 27?
Before you do that, can I just ask one more question?
You may not.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
Can we take one of the licenses away and give it to this guy?
No.
Once you
License to somebody, but don't give them a time frame in which they need to be up and running. No.
So I think to that, Greg, it's hard once the town has given a license for something, you can't force that company to essentially not go out of business because there's a pandemic and a lockdown and terrible economic times. And I don't know that that is the case with the 2 that have received licenses so far. I'm just giving that as a hypothetical example. If you give a license to someone to open a restaurant in town and the person's financing goes under and they are not able to open that restaurant, you can't force them to open in a certain amount of time.
No, I understand, but wouldn't the free market say to buy it from one of the other guys? As we currently sit.
We don't know that there's a financial hardship with the other guys. The other guys are moving along. It's not a super fast pace. I do know that the letters that I recently got from the Cannabis Control Commission were asking me to make comments by November. So no action can happen. They give a statutory deadline till November, to hear comments from the town.
Yeah, no, I'm actually not considering there's financial issues with anyone. All I'm saying is, wouldn't the actual capital market show if this guy wants it? Why would we make another one available? Why wouldn't he just buy one of these people out if he can? And he can. The number just might be too crazy. I mean, that's what the market is.
It's probably true.
And that's my bigger thing. We don't really have statistics on how much it's going to make us. So we're kind of making a decision on adding more because somebody wants a license that somebody else already has when that person can go to the other 2 people and ask to buy them.
So the other thing Greg, as Scott mentioned before, is this is an article brought forth by a citizen of the town to be placed on the town meeting warrant. So it's something that's at least somewhat outside of our control, whether or not this is, like, it's outside of our control whether or not this is on the warrant. It has to be on the warrant because it was brought forth in the appropriate manner to be on the warrant. So if you want our position to be that essentially that this guy should have to buy one of the already existing licenses and we shouldn't increase the number because that's not the right thing to do for the town financially, then you can make a motion to pass over Article 27. If that's not how everyone feels, we can either, or it is how everyone feels, we can either vote up or vote down that motion. But in this particular instance, it's centered around citizen bringing forth a petition for the warrant to try to force the hand of the town, essentially trying to get as much support in the town as they can to change the wording of the bylaw to make it more flexible for the number of licenses to suit their will, essentially. I don't know if I said that well at all.
Yeah, I mean, and there's no impact, at least directly, right? If the town decides to increase and we issue another one, there's only a potential upswing, right? There's not a downside to that.
Correct.
Yeah.
There's always a downside.
And there like the argument that could be made is if it goes poorly, it could decrease property values all around. If it brings lots of crime, it increases the amount that the police have to spend. It decreases property values, decreases the appeal of the town, etc. But as far as direct financial impact, no. There's no negative direct financial impact. Do we have a motion? Does anyone want to dare a motion?
I'll make a motion to
Motion.
recommend.
Second.
Yeah.
What are we doing?
So motion to recommend from Chris and a second from Justin. Do we have any further discussion on this? Sue?
Wouldn't you guys want to defer that to the selectmen since they're the ones who are putting it on at,
Okay.
after the warrant kind of closed and they reopened it rather than recommending it? I know it has some sort of financial effect in the long run, but
It's
I don't
actually
know.
a
I
zoning.
guess I can't put my thoughts across,
And
but
it's hard because it has, like Scott just said, it's a zoning bylaw, so we could, in theory, defer to the zoning board.
or the
It's something
planning
that or the planning board. It's something that the selectmen put on, so we could, in theory, defer to the selectmen. But there is a financial impact to it, so we could also take up and provide our recommendation as well. So I think
the selectmen will provide a recommendation.
yeah, I think it's really a question for our committee as to whether or not we feel we should provide a recommendation on this article.
Yeah, I kind of go back to, like, I know it's the finance committee, but we're also citizens of the town, so I support the motion to recommend. But if it's not proper, then we could change it, I guess.
Yeah, I'm
I
moving
think
hard if we'd rather just prefer.
All right, so we have one motion to recommend. So I'll say motion to defer to selectmen.
No, we would have to take up the motion that's on the table first and vote on that motion.
You can't have more than one motion.
Unless we retracted it. We can't have more than one motion at a time.
Matt, do we have a second for the motion?
We do. Chris made the motion, Justin seconded it.
If I may have the floor for 2 seconds.
Absolutely.
But I agree with Susan. I feel as though that since we are not the license granting authority, it is incumbent upon the Board of Selectmen to solicit our feedback if they feel as though there's going to be broad-based financial implications, or if there's going to be a use of those funds outside of what is traditional. In this particular sense, I do agree with Justin that we are citizens, and Joe is that we are citizens, and anybody else who may have said that, residents of the town. And now is the time to voice where our thoughts are. But in this particular instance, I think it is outside of our scope because candidly, we don't have any say in the issuance of licenses.
I'll retract my motion.
Justin, do you retract your second?
Sure.
Okay, motion is retracted.
So I guess to your point, Sean, right, the chance for us to make our voice heard is at the special town meeting. Yeah. Okay.
That's just my opinion, and I think that's the place to kind of talk it up or talk it down.
Gotcha.
So Sean, would your recommendation be deferring to the selectmen or to the planning board, given the zoning bylaws?
So the honestly, in this particular, and I could be mistaken, I would defer this back to the license granting authority, even though it's talking about planning stuff. It one gives it out
Which
to the
would
board.
be the Board of Selectmen.
It either gives it a chance to draw. Yeah, I think that's my opinion. So I think Joe actually wanted to put forth that motion is to defer to the Board of Selectmen, and I would second that.
Well, and we are open to that motion now, as our previous motion has been retracted.
So how does that work in the meeting? When we defer to the selectmen, does someone from the selectmen get up and then say how they feel about this article?
Either someone from the selectmen or the town manager, who is hired by and essentially the representative of the selectmen.
Got it.
Yeah, and you know, the interesting part of this is that somehow the planning board has to squeeze a meeting in to have a public hearing on this. And the planning board will also have to vote a recommendation for this ultimately, because it's obviously it's a zoning change.
Yeah.
So the selectmen may just vote to defer to the planning board. That might be my recommendation.
That's double deferral. So Joe, did you want to go back to making your recommendation?
Yeah, I recommend to defer to the selectmen.
Sean, would you second that? Oh, was that Chris seconding?
No.
Is Justin.
Okay, thanks, Justin. Do you have any further discussion on the motion to defer to the Board of Selectmen? Greg is waving. I don't know if he's voting or if he's...
Oh, I thought you were taking the vote.
Nope, not yet. I was asking for more discussion and Greg caught my eye, so I couldn't tell if he wanted to discuss more or if he was ready to vote. So with no more discussion, all those in favor of deferring to the Board of Selectmen? All those opposed, abstaining, it is unanimous. We will defer to the Board of Selectmen. They can defer to the Planning Board if they so choose. And that brings us once again to the end of the warrant. So we will just a real quick, gonna share screen again really quickly. Hang on a second. So just to kind of walk over what the current wording is for our what we're looking at for motions. As you can see, we've got updated amounts on the vote to approve Article 1 and talking about authorized to be borrowed, deferring to the planning board, deferring to the planning board, and then our other articles. I'm just going to leave this here for a second to see if there's anything anybody wanted to comment on or felt the need to comment on.
So with the wording changed for the Board of Health position, is that, we have to revisit that or no?
That's actually a good question.
I definitely like the
We
wording.
want to increase a part-time position to a full-time position in the Board of Health, which is the wording that we were looking for there.
Yeah. So we're on the record, I think, of talking about that, but do we have to reopen that and
No,
revote, or is it?
that our motion is the same either way.
Yeah.
Our
Okay.
recommendation is the same either way. So.
Mhm.
Anyone have anything else they wanted to discuss there?
No.
All right, going back to our agenda. That brings us to the end of our new business. Do we have any liaison reports?
Yes, I do.
Oh,
No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
I was gonna say.
Got excited there for a second, Justin.
Yeah, it was like first time, long time.
Yeah. All right, so no liaison reports. We don't have any correspondence. We do not have minutes to review today. We will potentially meet next week, depending on if there are any further changes or anything to discuss. I will contact you all to determine if we're going to end up meeting next week or not. As of right now, we don't have any particular need to meet, but as you know, things tend to pop up between here and there. So if something comes up and we're able to get things posted to meet in time, I will let you know. If not, we will meet closer to town meeting. Does anyone have anything else to discuss for tonight?
So are the motions that I sent you okay? And I can go ahead and get the constables to post the warrant and your motions, or you want to leave your motions off? I believe you guys have to post your motions before the 14 days.
Yes, Sue, I'll do a quick run through of it tomorrow to
Okay.
make sure that the wording's all good and correct, and I'll email you with the final approval tomorrow, if
All
that's
right,
okay.
because the constable is actually coming to town hall on Friday to pick up the documents from Nancy.
Yep, I'll definitely make sure to do it tomorrow.
Okay.
Let me put
And
that
you
in
guys, you saw
calendar for
Greg
tomorrow.
Corbo's updates as well, right?
Yes.
Okay. All is silent. Does that mean everything's all set?
I quickly went to make sure to put that into my schedule for tomorrow. So I get on that. Does anyone else have anything to discuss? Any motions?
Motion to adjourn.
A motion to adjourn and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor of adjourning? It is unanimous. We are adjourned. Thank you all. Have a good night, everybody.